but other stuff gets buried. But I'm really keen to ask about the Defence Home Ownership Assistance Scheme. I've had a constituent, an Army veteran and a serving ACT firefighter, raise concerns with me that participants in this scheme continue to only have access to 3 lenders, NAB, Australian Military Bank and Defence Bank, with the exclusive rights to write loans under the scheme. Is that correct?
Senator Pocock, Celia Perkins, Deputy Secretary, Security and Estate. Senator, the DHOAS scheme is...
Sorry, I've got a bunch of questions on this.
Yes, the DHOAS scheme, which is administered under a piece of legislation, is administered through a panel arrangement. The current panel does have 3 providers, as you just described.
It's been suggested that these 3 lenders have historically charged much higher interest rates than what is available in the open market. Is that correct?
Senator, we are aware of recent media to that effect. The 3 lending providers offer comparable mortgage products that they offer under to the open market. And we do have in support of our administration of the scheme a monthly review to align the DHOAS system to medium interest rates. I think it's important to describe how the DHOAS scheme works. The DHOAS scheme is in fact a mortgage product where the Commonwealth provides a subsidy paid directly into the mortgage holder's account to reduce their interest payments. And we do work, as I said, on a monthly basis with those 3 providers around alignment. But the products that are offered through those 3 panel arrangements are standard mortgage products.
But Ms Perkins, you said that there's been recent media on this, but this issue was raised by the member for Herbert, Afghanistan veteran Philip Thompson MP, in 2022 in the House of Representatives. More than 3 years later, nothing has changed. Defence members who have one of these loans are shoveling thousands of extra dollars compared to the average Australian towards a mortgage. Why hasn't something happened in those 3 years?
Senator, as I described, the Defence Homeowner Assistance Scheme is established under a piece of legislation. We did undertake and work through the Parliament some amendments in January 2023 to expand eligibility and lessen restrictions on access to the program. As I've described, there's a range of mechanisms, governance and assurance of those providers. We would not agree with the characterisation that veterans are being overcharged, but rather it is a home loan product where the government subsidy, which is quite a substantial subsidy, is paid against the interest rates.
Well, you may not agree, but let me just put this to you and I'd love your thoughts. Veteran-owned Stanford Financial, Australia's leading DHOAS broker by loan volume, has said that advertised variable rates on the 11th of May 2026, so before the Reserve Bank's 5th of May rate decision was passed through, showed NAB's Defence Force home loan sitting at 6.54%, Australian Military Bank's rate saver at 6.14%, and Defence Bank's premier low rate at 5.69% for loans up to 70% of a property's value. By comparison, leading non-panel lenders were offering equivalent products at between 5.34 and 5.84%. That's a gap of 80 basis points. And so that means someone who has a $700,000 home loan over 30 years is paying approximately $130,000 in additional interest. So how can you say that you don't accept that they are paying more if they are paying more?
I might just take this question. I mean, comparing financial arrangements is difficult because average rates and listed rates are not the same as the effective rates. and so there needs to be a detailed calculation to compare apples with apples. I just would note that as Ms Perkins has said, that there's a memorandum of understanding between Defence and the Department of Veteran Affairs who administer the scheme. The panel of 3 home loan providers who have been approved to provide the home loan products operate under a deed of agreement. That deed is due to expire in the middle of this year, and there is a tender process underway to ensure that the next panel meets contemporary and future needs of ADS personnel and veterans with the lens of recruitment and retention. So these matters will be part of the consideration of the tender arrangements, historical performance and future performance will be managed through that process.
Secretary, comparing apples with apples, comparing interest rates with interest rates, surely is exactly that.
It's not the case, though. I mean, I certainly have been to lenders, and as the same lender, get vastly different opportunities from banks because of the packaging and the arrangements, and there's a lot of complexities in achieving good outcomes in the financial system. There's also obligations on lenders to take into account risk characterisations of individuals. So it's a complicated arrangement, and so you have to be careful about. You can get shifts in average rates of interest payments because of this change in the composition of the people who have applied for loans over a period. So the most important thing is that the evaluation of the arrangements in the home loan provider deed going forward ensures that there's a rigorous assessment of the opportunities for people to use these home loan providers.
Secretary, I'm interested why you're sort of defending these lenders so much. You'd assume if the government was essentially helping underwrite home loans of defence personnel and veterans, you'd expect an even better rate. But clearly that's not the case, and I hope and assume that this tender process would look to actually expand the panel to other lenders to provide a bit more competition. Is that the aim of the...
I don't have the exact details of the tender process, but it would be absolutely the case under our procurement processes that we'd be looking for value for money and effective delivery for ADF personnel and veterans going forward. So that would absolutely be the process. I'm not necessarily defending individual entities, etc., just pointing out that that the high-level metrics often are not accurate in terms of what it means for individuals.
Well, I'm going off what Stanford Financial say, and they go on to say that the Commonwealth grants the exclusivity in return for commissions paid into consolidated revenue, initially estimated by the Australian National Audit Office at around $170 million over the scheme's first decade. ADF members and veterans pay that cost through their interest rates. In substance, it is a tax on those who serve, collected by the banks. Is this being essentially used to revenue raise? 170 mil over a decade, that is a lot of money from defence members and veterans.
I mean, that is not the purpose of the home loan scheme.
So why do commissions get paid into consolidated revenue then?
So I'm very happy to take those questions on notice and get the Department of Veteran Affairs, who administer the scheme, to provide answers as to the extent that they are able on the financial administration. Just to be clear, often the purpose of the scheme is to provide home loans and provide direct assistance to individuals to be able to afford housing. That is the purpose. That would be the aim of any tender project. It is the case that that in any normal arrangement there are commissions, etc. We will ask the Department of Veteran Affairs to provide extra information that they can on notice.
Why was that part of the design? Why bring 170 mil into consolidated revenue rather than saying we actually just want you to give the very best possible rate you can to our members so they can buy a home?
I am not sure if the characterisation you have is accurate, because I haven't got the details, given it's a scheme administered by the Department of Veterans Affairs. There are, in theory, sometimes arrangements where revenue that's raised actually goes into consolidated revenues to reduce conflict, as opposed to if fees go back to the kind of area that actually provide the tender discussions. but the details, that's just a hypothetical. I don't know if that's appropriate in this case. It is usually the case that there are costs involved in providing home loans, and that is compensated through different mechanisms. Sometimes it's through upfront fees, sometimes it's through commissions, sometimes it's encapsulated in the interest rates. So there are different ways that entities cover the costs of providing loans to customers, and that would have been part of the tender evaluation process to look at the overall value for money.
But you're saying that you want the commission, and so that 170 million over 10 years. That's not a small amount of money. Why are there only 3 lenders when the government's 5% deposit scheme offers a panel of 47 lenders, including the Australian Military Bank?
And these are all things that will be considered as part of the refresh of the home loan providers' deeds, which is currently undertaken.
But Secretary, why is it taken so long? As I said, this was raised in 2022 by Philip Thompson. I assume officials have known this is an issue for a long time.
And the arrangements are administered by the Department of Veteran Affairs. So
No. So yes, but Defence establishes the panel of lenders. So you can't handball this one to DVA because Defence establishes the panel of lenders, and so this is in your court, and you've essentially known about a problem for 3 or 4 years. And now, finally, we have this process. In the meantime, anyone with a home loan is paying more than they could or should have been paying.
Senator, just to come back to the purpose of the scheme and the work we have done, as I've already mentioned, some legislative amendments were made in early 2023. That's been very much focused around how we can expand the scheme and open up eligibility and make it less restrictive. As I've described, it is an administered program. The panel arrangements have run, as all government panels are. They had a fixed term at the time the last panel was established back in 2017. We're now in an open market tender. We invited all eligible financial institutions who can meet the legislated terms of the arrangements to tender. We are in that tender process now, and we hope to have new arrangements in place by the end of this year. I would just say again that our analysis and assessment and our evaluation of the program is that these are competitive loan products. Right now there are 30,000 scheme participants, serving and former serving members. The Commonwealth supports those subsidy payments, as I described, which are paid directly to the mortgage account of the scheme participant as an offset on their payments. It is a program now underway for almost 28 years with many thousands of ADF members supported into home ownership.
Thank you. Maybe on notice, if you could let me know how much has gone into consolidated revenue from commissions, and why don't you just use the same panel as the 5% deposit scheme?
As I've described, Senator, the Defence Homeowner Assistance Scheme operates under its own legislation, and that sets the terms for the way in which this panel was provided. The current panel was established prior to the scheme you've just described. There are a number of elements in the scheme and in our requirements of the panel that are specific to the nature of service. As I said, we're undergoing the retender now with the benefit of some legislative amendments to increase eligibility and to encourage more people into the scheme.
And we would hope that the tender would yield a competitive outcome that benefits the intended beneficiaries.
Okay. Now, Senator Lambie, I understand you've got a few questions following on from this, and we are going to lunch at 1, so I'll give you the call for the next 6 minutes.
Thank you so much. I do. Who does the deed? Who signs off on the deed now with your time of service and that to give to the banks?
So the administration of the scheme, Senator, is undertaken by the Department of Veterans Affairs. So just to be clear for the committee,
Sorry, this has changed then, because it used to come from Defence. Your deed come from Defence. It doesn't come from there anymore. Is that what you're telling me?
It is my understanding that the Department of Veterans...
I suggest you double check that. I want to know where that deed gets signed off. Okay?
Senator Lambie, are you, I think, maybe asking about the certificate of service rather than the
the
deed?
certificate of service. So you've got to supply that, so we can give that to the bank. So you do that, correct?
Why don't we take the procedural questions of the split of responsibilities on notice for you, Senator Lambie? My team are responsible for the administration of the panel and work closely with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
The other thing you can do, since I had my home loan, you can go back to 2000. You can tell us what those interest rates have been, because I can tell you now, we get a lot less for our home loans. Our deals are shit. They're not even worth having. The bank's a disgrace, excuse my French. Okay, well, you say this is an enticement for people to come in and serve, is because you'll get a cheaper home loan. That's rubbish. And if you're out there selling that, then you're lying, because that is no longer the case. You know it, and so do I. So until you fix that, that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Senator Lambie,
first question.
Yes. I know, before you go to your next question, as you appreciate, there's a few words that you just used, if you wouldn't mind just withdrawing.
I'll withdraw them.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll withdraw them.
Anyway, proceed.
Sorry. Can you tell me, is there still a cap on how much we can borrow on that, well, that interest rate that's not worth it anymore? Do we still have an 80,000 cap, or...?
Senator, again, I might take the specifics on...
Oh, my God, you've been in the business 25 years and you can't answer these simple questions on defence home loans. You have got to be kidding me.
As I said, Senator, the amendments that have recently been introduced expand eligibility and take some of the restrictions away. So it's a shorter qualifying service period to encourage dropping from 4 years to 2 years for members of the permanent force, and from 8 years for 4 years for members of the reserve, so people can get into the scheme earlier. And we've reduced the minimum service threshold in the subsidy tiers, and we've removed the time limit for veterans to access the scheme. It used to be 5 years. I don't have with me the upwards borrowing limit. Certainly part of the design changes are to keep pace with changes in the housing market and the financial market. And I would...
Okay, yeah, that's lovely, but it was 80,000 last I checked, unless that's gone up in the last 6 months. 80,000. So just so people in the Australian public understand out there, we're only allowed to borrow at 80,000. We get charged more interest than normal, and they want us to go and use their loan system. And do you know what's even more heartbreaking? Our defence bank's doing that to us. It really is grubby, disgusting material. In one mouthful, you're trying to say, come and join, it's a great career. And in the meantime, you're removing all these things that used to be, this is what we joined for. You're not getting that? Anyway, can you find me out that information, please? Because then I'll be able to tell you how much of rubbish the system it is. So please go back to 2000, and I want to know what those rates look like in the last 26 years, because what you'll see is that they've gone down. What happened to Westpac? Why did they withdraw out? Did you lose them along the way because they realised it wasn't the greatest scheme for them either? Westpac used to do the 25 grand and you couldn't get them to sign on any further. Why is that?
Senator, as is always the case with the panel, we tender in the open market. We invite financial institutions to bid and then work through a normal tender evaluation process. I couldn't speak to the tender evaluation that happened for the 2017 panel. The current panel's been in place since then, and as we've already said, will be replaced later this year.
Okay, and so, because my thought was always that the government picked up the extra. Okay, that was the whole point. The banks weren't involved, the government, but the government doesn't do that. That's why we thought special service to serve,
Senator,
but the banks are dictating to you, not the government.
Senator, the panel arrangements include robust governance and requirements on those lenders. You're right, the Commonwealth does pay the subsidy that goes towards the interest rates. That's a substantial...
Oh, so how come it's been paying us less? You're trying to get us to all join over the last 15 years. How disgusting are the government? We get a worse deal than what we've ever got. Don't listen until it's fixed.
Senator, the government, as part of the recruitment and retention initiatives aimed at the ADF workforce and to make this scheme easier to qualify for and more attractive does provide a rather large sum of money which provides that subsidy on the interest payment. So as a participant in the scheme, the Commonwealth funds to these normal market products the subsidy. As we've described, we'll take on notice the structure within the panel and the arrangements within that, and we can get that to you in some
The government
detail.
just says you're going to get 2% less than the market price, and that is what you're going to do with the defence personnel. But you don't want to do that. It's not a lot of money you are paying out as government for special service, because apparently our service is so special, but you take all these things off us and they're getting reduced. I have no further questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. Well, on that note, we're going to break for lunch and I'll see everyone back here in 1 hour. Thank fuck for that.
Just swear.